Each video in this new series will be between 10 and 20 minutes long, with well-researched, in-depth analysis. As you might imagine, this project requires an enormous amount of research, because I'm not just looking at a handful of games or just the worst offenders, but at hundreds of games and hundreds of different characters across all genres. This is an incredibly ambitious project because of the scope and scale of the research and production involved.
Research. Apparently she put a lot of research into her videos for the damsel in distress. Allow GAMERant to show you what real research is. What's up, gamers? Welcome to GAMERant. So Feminist Frequency, Sarkeesian, whatever the hell her name is, has ultimately released part 2 of her Damsel in Distress. I watched it and I was like, alright, this is just getting a little bit of ridiculousness, because, you know, in her Kickstarter video, as I showed you the segment at the beginning of this video, she talks about a lot of research. The only real research she actually did was, what games have females in them, how are those females represented, and how those females, or their characteristics of those females, offend her as a female in the real world, alright? So as stated, I was going to ultimately give you some facts. So let's take the first word in her channel, which is feminist, and why don't we throw you the definition from a 1994 Oxford English Miniature Dictionary. Alright. Feminist. Supporter of women's claims to be given rights equal to those of men. Alright. Let me say that again. Supporter of women's claims to be given rights equal to those of men. Alright. Now think about that definition as we go through and watch these segments from her video. In fact, if you actually go to her channel, you can think about that exact definition as you watch any of her videos, alright? Now let's jump even further into the past, because we can do that with a book. We're going to check out the Webster's Dictionary, published in 1952. So we're going even further back. That little dictionary was 1994. Feminism, a theory, cult, or movement on the part of those who assert the advocate what they consider the rights of women and who favor doing away with all social, economic, and political restrictions on the sex. Alright. I want you to think about that definition. Another thing that I want you to think about as we watch through these video segments of hers, let's just jump right into this.
This series will include critical analysis of many beloved games and characters, but remember that it's both possible, and even necessary, to simultaneously enjoy media while also being critical of its more problematic or pernicious aspects.
So in that video segment, she talks about problematic and pernicious aspects that ultimately you, the player, the viewer, the reader, the watcher, need to ultimately take in and take these things to notification as you enjoy your entertainment. The biggest issue that I have with this is that she's making this sound as if this is a hard, cold fact, that this is an issue within entertainment, and that it affects real people. That, like, for example, if I was a 12-year-old boy playing video games and I would see female characters portrayed in the cliche way that, yes, they are portrayed, that I would somehow get this fundamental thinking and idea that that's how real women are supposed to be treated, or that's how real women should act or do act. But I could tell you right now that growing up playing video games, growing up and reading books, watching movies, I never at any given time ever even remotely comprehended the idea that that's how women are supposed to act, that's how they should act, etc., etc., etc. You know how many movies I've ultimately seen where women are usually always found in the kitchen? You know, and you always get those cliche guys out there. You can find all kinds of retarded Facebook joke images of that's where women belong. I personally don't believe in that. I enjoy cooking just as much as the next woman, and quite frankly, there are some women out there that hate cooking it within itself. So, yes, there are cliches within this world that exist, both in the real world and the fictional world. But you really can't compare the fictional world to the real world, because quite frankly, I'm sorry to say, but fictional characters, male or female, don't have any rights. Why? Because it's a writer. That writer can be a male or a female that makes them who they are. And just because they use some kind of cliche aspect to make that character doesn't mean that goes against what women should or does represent to women. Because the reality of it is there are many characters, both male and female, that are direct derivatives of what and how real people would react within a particular situation or scenario. Granted, not every woman out there is outrageous as some of the women represented in entertainment. But the idea that she's trying to represent that this is somehow going to affect real people is quite ignorant and arrogant within itself.
Let's start with the story of a game that no one ever got to play. Back in 1999, game developer Rare was hard at work on a new original title for the Nintendo 64 called Dinosaur Planet. The game was to star a 16-year-old hero named Crystal as one of two playable protagonists. She was tasked with traveling through time, fighting prehistoric monsters with her magical staff, and saving the world. She was strong, she was capable, and she was heroic. Pretty cool, right? Well, it would have been, except the game never got released. As development on the project neared completion, legendary game designer Shigeru Miyamoto joked about how he thought it should be the third installment in his Star Fox franchise instead.
So as you can see, Feminist Frequency also just introduced Dinosaur Planet, unfortunately a game that never was. Now, she ultimately referred to two protagonists, but she mainly focused on the female protagonist within itself. Cueing the other male protagonist from this Nintendo Power Player's Guide that also never was. And you can see that the main protagonist, one of the main protagonists, I should say, is represented on said cover. Now, another thing that she jokingly talked about is she pretty much talked about how, you know, Nintendo at that time basically was joking around, oh, this would be funny if, you know, we decided to change it from this to Star Fox Adventures. However, QN real research, and this lovely image that comes from a magazine, where they're actually talking about Dinosaur Planet and said actual Star Fox game that really isn't mentioned. In the beginning of this particular article, they talk about how that there was rumors that the game's going to actually be moved to the GameCube, but they were still going to actually work on the actual Nintendo 64 version. So apparently at that particular time when Nintendo originally decided to do this, they actually decided to continue production of the game and ultimately have two of them. But then they probably ultimately decided to make that business decision that just ultimately decided that, you know, people probably would end up complaining and arguing over copying, you know, this and that and the other. So they more than likely ended up canceling Dinosaur Planet. Not necessarily because it was just like, who needs a female main protagonist hero? Let's replace it with a male. I highly doubt that was their ethical thinking at any given time, but that's what Feminist Frequency wants you to believe, when in reality it just comes down to a business decision, alright? Had nothing to do with whether the male or female character should have been exactly that, of Star Fox Adventure or Dinosaur Planet within itself. It was nothing more than a business decision.
What am I doing?
And yes, that is cheesy saxophone music playing to make sure it's crystal clear that she is now an object of desire, even while in suspended animation.
So in this particular video segment, Feminist Frequency is pointing out the idea of how Crystal is now an object to be desired by Fox McCloud, a sex object, etc., etc., etc. But let's analyze this for everything that it's worth. Let's take these characters and place them in the real world and get rid of Crystal being a prisoner. Let's put them in the mall. So are we going to alliterate that if Fox McCloud, wandering around the mall, sees Crystal, who may be a checkier, or maybe she's just going through the line because she just bought some stuff, and he is visually attracted to her, does this mean that she is somehow lesser of a woman? No, it doesn't. Even if we were to take the same scenario that they currently are in, Fox McCloud being the hero and Crystal being the damsel in distress, does this somehow lessen her being a woman? No, it doesn't. It doesn't. Alright? And the idealistic views that Miss Feminist Frequency represents within this clearly shows that she doesn't understand a whole lot about real relationships in the real world if she can't even comprehend something as simple as a relationship within a fictional world. People in real life are first visually attracted to somebody, alright? Alright, think about every guy you've ever been attracted to if you're a female. Think about every female you've been attracted to if you're a male. Alright? And then I want you to alliterate that it's always a visual representation first, all right? You become visually attracted to that person. Only if you desire to take that extra step, interact with them, will you ultimately become emotionally involved. So love within itself starts as a visual attraction from either a male or a female, or sometimes both, all right? That's just how the world works. So it makes sense that they would take this kind of representation and stick it in a fictional world, because that's how real people interact with each other. And quite frankly, even if a real person was going to save somebody in the real world, say like a firefighter rushing into a burning building and ends up saving a young, beautiful woman from burning to death, it's massively possible that he would be visually attracted to her. But that doesn't lessen him as a man. It doesn't lessen him as a firefighter. It doesn't lessen him as a professional, all right? There's nothing wrong with being visually attracted to somebody, even if that somebody is someone you're saving in the real world or a fictional world by a fictional character within itself. So her whole idea that this is somehow going to lower Crystal and just, lower her to a form to where she's like a flea on a rat is relatively ignorant and arrogant of her. And quite frankly, so far the only real sexist I'm seeing is the sexism that's coming from her and not what's actually portrayed in these so-called video games. So let's continue on, shall we?
To add insult to injury, Fox is now using her magical staff to fight his way through the game to save her.
Alright, so apparently to add insult to injury, Fox McCloud is now using Crystal's staff to save her. No, that is incorrect. When Fox McCloud is first introduced to this staff, a message is actually played from Crystal. At no given time does she say, "You can use this staff to save me." None whatsoever. Alright? In fact, that's not even the idea that's even personified to Fox McCloud, that, hey, you can use this staff, which is owned by this person, to save her. No, that is not in any way, shape, or form scenario. It is just an item that he happened to see lying around, picked up, and it will help him on his peace mission, which is what he initially showed up there for, was to help with a peace treaty and other stuff of that nature. So the idea of what she ultimately claimed in this short video segment does make me question whether or not she actually played the game and paid attention to it.
The tale of how Crystal went from protagonist of her own epic adventure to the passive victim in someone else's game illustrates how the damsel in distress trope disempowers female characters and robs them of the chance to be heroes in their own right.
Alright, just so we can gratify this further, Crystal from Dinosaur Planet was not robbed of her position as a protagonist. Why? Because Dinosaur Planet had two protagonists. It was not Crystal's game, it was their game, alright? You cannot argue sexism in entertainment if you're going to use sexism terms yourself. It just doesn't really make a lot of logical sense. So yes, Crystal was not the only protagonist, there was a male, and yes, so it is actually their game, not Crystal's game, which means... So that pretty much sums that concept up. And also how she says that it robs female characters by putting them in the position of a damsel in distress and not the main protagonist? No, incorrect. Listen up, ladies and gentlemen. Who creates video games? Alright? Alright, but ignore graphic designers, programmers. Who creates video games? It starts with a writer, alright? Who creates a novel? A writer. Who creates a movie? It starts with a writer. You see a trend going here, right? Everything starts with a writer. So, whether that writer is a male or a female, it is that person's decision to make their hero a female or a male, or to make their male or female a damsel or dude in distress. Alright? It has nothing to do with the rights of fictional characters. Fictional characters don't have any rights. Why? Because if I am writing, let me give you George R.R. Martin's A Song of Ice and Fire, alright? George R.R. Martin is the god of Westeros. He is literally God. He is every god, alright? Because he chooses what goes on within the story, what happens to the character, alright? He chooses the scenarios that take place to them. Does this mean that he is sexist if he does something that feminist frequency would disagree with because a female character was treated somehow wrongly in her opinion? No, because this is the real world, and in the real world, both male and females get treated incorrectly and not equally. This goes with the same with race, alright? Still in the real world, we still have a problem with race, and not every race is treated equally, alright? So it would make sense for writers to take things that they have an opinion on and kind of filter them and turn them and mold them into a fictional tale within themselves, alright? So, again, Crystal had no choice. She had no right to choose whether she wanted to be a hero or a damsel in distress. It came down to the writer who wanted her to be in that position, alright? It does not mean that it takes away from her, that it lessens her like she's a flea on a rat now. No. Every character, even the damsel or the dude in distress, plays a significant role within the story. If you see the damsel in distress as nothing more than a goal, an object to be desired, then clearly you haven't been paying attention to the overall story or the character development throughout the entertainment that you're actually reading, watching, or playing. Alright, that pretty much sums up my thoughts on this. Let's move on.
As a trope, the damsel in distress is a plot device in which a female character is placed in a perilous situation from which she cannot escape on her own and must be rescued by a male character, usually providing the core incentive or motivation for the protagonist's quest.
Alright, so feminist frequency is pretty much alliterating that she's being, it's kind of funny. She's talking about sexism and she's being sexist in her own video. The irony in that, alright? Because apparently a damsel in distress can only be a female, according to feminist frequency. The hero can only be a male, and the damsel in distress must be saved by a male. That is total bullshit. Here we have the complete guide to writing fantasy volume 1. Now this does portray to writing a novel. How does it portray to a video game? Because that's the majority of what she's talking about. Writing is writing, alright? It's just in a different medium, alright? The advice found in here could easily be used for helping a writer who's going to create a story for a video game, alright? It's no different. The only difference is how that story is delivered and showed and portrayed. So let's jump to page 42 in the Complete Guide to Writing Fantasy Volume 1 with a chapter called Living World, How to Make Your Characters Real by T. Morris, who, yes, is a dude if you really want to know. Let's check out his description of a hero. The hero, don't let this masculine macho header fool you. In our post-Xena society, the hero can also be a heroine. Male or female, the term hero is no longer limited by the boundaries of gender. This is a good thing. Why not have females take control of your story? The popularity of the aforementioned warrior princess has only crystallized the demand for female heroes in fantasy, a genre plagued with delicate, frail, versatile virgins chained in a dungeon somewhere, hoping beyond despair that her valiant knight will come to rescue her from harm. So that right there gives you a bit of an idea. This book was published in 2003, at least the version that I'm currently holding, that what we think of a hero is not what it used to be. Definitely that her definition probably could have been more trousseau for back in the past, but in this modern civilization where society continues to grow and to allow more rights not only to sexes but to races within themselves, we're seeing a vast change within entertainment within itself, even though there still are, yes, some cliches that exist. Let's go check out his description of a damsel in distress. From here on out, we will be referring to the damsel in distress as a did, because much like the hero, this term is not gender-specific, nor should it apply to an individual. Let's say, for example, you want to try a bit of the conventional roles, but in the reverse genders. This would make your damsel in distress a dude in distress. Or let's say you want to avoid the whole person in peril formula, and you make it a single hero hired to save a nation. Then you would have a domination in distress, alright? Or a nation in distress within itself, alright? So yes, that goes to show you right there that the damsel in distress and that the hero roles are not gender specific, and the only person who's making them gender specific is feminist frequency.
At the turn of the 20th century, victimized young women became the cliché of choice for the nascent American film industry, as it provided an easy and sensational plot device for the silver screen.
Alright, what she's been talking about, yes, it may have become popular in that particular area, but it's a form of storytelling that has existed for quite some time. I mean, you can even look at a variety of different mythologies that use the same type of premise within themselves. You can even look at some religions that use the same type of cliche premise within themselves. A guy rescuing a female, etc., etc., etc. There's nothing new that we don't know about this already. So I'm not really exactly sure why she ultimately decides to continue to bring this up, as if it's some kind of fact that it's going to continue to harm our society or civilization, or how males personify and see women and young girls in the real world. Because quite frankly, it doesn't. You know, being a person who grew up playing video games, watching movies, and reading books, at no time while I'm playing a video game as a child did I ever sit there and be like, that's totally how women are in the real world. I need to save me a damsel in distress. I don't think so. I was being entertained. I enjoyed the gameplay. I enjoyed the story. I enjoyed the movie, the television. And at no time did it ever occur to me to be like, that's how real women are, and that's how they should be. I don't think so. That's not what entertainment is here, but according to Feminist Frequency, apparently that is the message all entertainment is sending to young males and young girls, that that is how you're supposed to be, that's how you should be, when in reality, I think there's more males and females that have grown up watching and reading and playing these kinds of scenarios, to where they definitely know that they can separate fantasy from reality, unlike Feminist Frequency
instead. However, the Japanese game already had 4 playable characters. So the designers opted to include Toad and the princess to fill the 2 remaining slots, building directly on top of the pre-existing character models. So really, if we're honest, Peach is kinda accidentally playable in this one.
So how is Peach accidentally playable in Super Mario Bros. 2 when you look at the original footage, which you did get to see as she was talking, that there was a female character that you could originally select from the original game? So it actually made logical sense for them to choose Mario and Luigi, add in Toadstool, and then obviously because the original game had a female, they ultimately decided to use their signature female Princess Peach. So the idea that she was accidentally or got lucky to be put in this game is rather arrogant and ignorant of Feminist Frequency to think. Just saying, alright?
The brief intro sequence accompanying many classic arcade games tends to reinforce the framing of women as a possession that's been stolen from the protagonist. The hero's fight to retrieve his stolen property then provides the lazy justification for the actual gameplay.
That's an interesting idea, Feminist Frequency, but here, let me alliterate something to you. As I have already stated, when I played Mario as a child, I never really looked at Princess Peach as Mario's girl in any way, shape, or form. And even if he was, he would not be going to rescue his possession. Alright? The only person here who is making females in video games sound like a possession or a prize to be won is you, alright? Mario is simply going to save basically his queen. I'm not really sure why they call her princess, because that really doesn't make any sense. If she's the ruler of the Mushroom Kingdom, then she's actually a queen, not a princess, but who am I to judge on the naming of Nintendo and whatnot? But either way, she is the ruler of Mushroom Kingdom, and he is simply going to save his queen, alright? And put her back where she belongs, alright? Now, we could even, Lalo, which is a puzzle-type game that does have a male and a female character, and yes, our female character gets taken away, and it's up to Lalo to go save her. Is she, I think her name was Leela, if I'm not mistaken, I could be wrong. Is she a possession of Lalo? No. He loves her, alright? And when you love somebody, what do you do if something happens to them, alright? If your wife died, if your husband died, alright? Would you just be like, oh well, they was just my possession, I owned them, who really cares? People don't do that in the real world. The only people making women out to be possessions in video games is Feminist Frequency. Me, as a male, I've never looked at that. Again, Mario, he's just going to save his queen, alright? Lalo, he's going to save his girlfriend. What guy wouldn't want to do that? And I'm not talking even in the realm of fantasy, like dreaming about saving a girl. I'm talking about what real man would not want to attempt to go out and try and find his daughter, his girlfriend, his wife that may have been taken. There's nothing wrong with that. That does not demean her. That does not mean that the husband or the father is like, my daughter is my possession, I need her back. No! Come on, let's get real, ladies and gentlemen, alright? So yes, possession, it's all in Feminist Frequency's head, and it doesn't exist within video games. Because she's the one being sexist and portraying females in video games in this personification.
Even though Nintendo certainly didn't invent the damsel in distress, the popularity of their Save the Princess formula essentially set the standard for the industry. The trope quickly became the go-to motivational hook for developers, as it provided an easy way to tap into adolescent male power fantasies, in order to sell more games to young straight boys and men.
Again, who's the one being sexist in this video? Feminist Frequency. I mean, like I've said, when it comes down to it, what is a video game? It's telling a story, alright? And when you look at the realm of writing, the realm of writing is full of cliches, alright? From taking over the world to childhood friends that grow up to become lovers. The realm of writing within itself in every form, on any form of entertainment, is massively cliche, alright? And it always comes down to that personification that a writer, whether they're in video games, whether they're novels, screenplay, whatever, how can I take this cliche aspect and put my own twist on it to kind of somewhat make it original, alright? And this is something that I have an issue with. If she is supposedly done so much research, seeing as how she's directly attacking writers, you know, writers, because they're the people that create these stories, these characters, etc. Don't you think she should have did a little bit of research in, I don't know, writing within itself, not just simply video games and basing this on her opinion? To me, it's a little one-sided argument, you know? You should have facts from, you know, actual writers, you know? That just kind of makes sense. Not to mention, what she's talking about is pretty much, as I've already stated, taking away the concept of freedom of speech.
Similarly, in The Wind Waker, Tetra is a feisty and impressive young pirate captain. But as soon as she's revealed to be and transformed into her more stereotypically feminine form of Princess Zelda, she's told that she's no longer allowed to accompany Link on the adventure because it's suddenly too dangerous for her.
So basically what you're saying, Feminist Frequency, is that it's not okay for a father to worry about his daughter or son and to tell them that they cannot do this or that because it may be dangerous to their life or health. Yeah, let's move on, shall we?
This brings us to one of the core reasons why the trope is so problematic and pernicious for women's representations. The damsel in distress is not just a synonym for weak. Instead, it works by ripping away the power from female characters, even helpful or seemingly capable ones. No matter what we're told about their magical abilities, skills, or strengths, they're still ultimately captured or otherwise incapacitated and then must wait for rescue.
No, again, that's not the fundamentals or the point of a damsel in distress. That's not the role of a female character in any form of entertainment. If you truly believe that, you are beyond ignorant and arrogant. You lack the rationality or the coherent coherency to actually come up with a common, sensual answer, which is people have a right to create their own stories. That is the truth. If you do not like it, Feminist Frequency, here is my advice to you. Start writing your own novels, creating your own heroes. After all, there have been many males and female writers that have already created female heroes. I guess you could add more to the ones that already exist. Alright? You could also write a story showing us how to not make the so-called damsel in distress apparently lower and demeaning, as you soulingly desire like to point her out as. Again, the only person being sexist in this is not the characters or the writers creating these characters, be they male or female. It is you.
Now, I grew up on Nintendo. I've been a fan of the Mario and Zelda franchises for most of my life, and they'll always have a special place in my heart, as I'm sure is true for a great number of gamers out there. But it's still important to recognize and think critically about the more problematic aspects, especially considering many of these franchises are as popular as ever, and the characters have become worldwide icons.
So yes, Feminist Frequency has ultimately alliterated that she has played many of these games, or most of the games, such as Zelda and Mario. But this does make me question whether or not she truly understands what a story is. Because remember, even though her video is focusing on video games, what is a video game? It's a story, alright? It's telling a story. And everything she's complaining about is part of a story, all right? These are like set standards, all right? Not even set standards, because as I've gone through, they've evolved over time to where a hero is not dependent on whether he has a dick or a vagina, all right? A damsel in distress is also not dependent on the fact of whether they are male or female within this world. The only way a person would truly think that that's what they should be is if they think like that and they see it for that, because they don't notice that it's evolving and changing over time. And this is something that's prevalent even now, all right? I mean, come on. Like I just said in the previous segment, Hillary attempted to go for presidency, all right? So yes, the sociology of women in more important roles is definitely changing and adding. It's slow, but it's getting there, all right? And that's the point, because I mean, could you imagine if we were in this technologically advanced, but we still had the primitive thinking of a caveman, go club you on the head, drag you home, you're my fucking woman now? I don't think so, all right? Come on, ladies and gentlemen. That's what she's making video games sound to be. That's what she's making writers sound to be. And there are tons of writers, both male and females, that use these same types of scenarios, all right? Yes, there are female writers out there that write novels that have a male hero and a female damsel in distress. Does that mean she's sexist of basically her own sex? No, come on. Let's get the fundamentals here. The biggest issue Feminist Frequency has is the problem with how females are portrayed. Well, you can't change anything about that. There's nothing sexist about it. The only thing that you can do is write your own stories. Create your own entertainment for other people to enjoy. Alright? Creating these videos isn't going to help in any way, shape, or form. And as I said, did you take into notification of those definitions, feminism and feminist? Alright? Does Feminist Frequency truly fit that category now that you know what the definitions actually mean and what her videos are trying to convey? Again, she's basically in this entire video attacking freedom of speech, because it is a person, is a writer, male and female, that create these stories. And this is something that she is failing to understand. And if she wants to change it, what does she got to do? She's got to do what every other female has already done before her. They got into the business of writing, they started creating their own stories, and they started tweaking and twisting things about it within itself, alright? That's the answer, alright? She's not going to get anywhere with these videos because they don't help women's rights in any way, shape, or form. This is a form of entertainment, women in a fictional world, created by both men and women on equal ground, alright? Anyway, I hope you enjoyed part 1 of this video. I will be doing part 2 probably sometime down the road. It took me almost an entire day to do this thing. I hope you enjoyed it in some fashion or form, and I will see you next time on GAMERant.